I'm struggling to fully understand this opposition to the requirement for monitoring and recording the pre-canvassing. And we want to trust you. The problem is that people are concerned. And when something happens behind closed doors, it causes them to have concern, whether it's warranted or it's not. And right now, we hear from constituents day after day about their lack of trust in the process. And having trust in the integrity and fidelity of our election process, which forms the bedrock of this republic, is really, really essential. So I recognize that, you know, Senator Dush and I were here. We were exchanging sidebar conversation, you know, about the technical difficulties. I chair the Communications and Technology Committee. I truly understand the magnitude of the digital divide in this Commonwealth. But I do think that those are things that we are working very diligently in a bipartisan fashion to close that digital divide, both in our most rural areas and even in those internet deserts in our most urban areas. And I do think that we need to demystify this, and we need to provide that assurance to the public that there is fidelity and integrity in their election process. If I may, want to turn to a concern and an issue that we had in York County. And although neither the special committee report nor Senate Bill 878 address the issue of number of ballots to be printed, there were a number of problems during the 2021 primary election, including in my home county of York, which ran out of ballots in many precincts. So how does something like this happen? And should we consider an amendment to keep this from happening in York County and other counties in future elections?
I can start there. Certainly when we did Act 77, we put language in to try to help counties estimate what kind of ballot numbers they might need at their precincts based on the average of the last 3 similar elections. Obviously, voter turnout is not always predictable. And that is some of what we saw, I think, in York County is just the numbers didn't add up to the estimates. It's my understanding, and I'll be happy to be corrected if I'm wrong, that again, those estimates didn't match reality. It was not anything that happened wrong to try and disenfranchise any voter, and that those voters were still permitted to vote by provisional ballot or to use other machines in the meantime, so that nobody lost the ability to vote.
Actually, that's not in fact the case,
That's not.
Schaefer. No, it is not. News reports were out. People came home from work, went to their polling place to be turned away because they could not vote. Had to go home, take care of their children, to go back to find that the polls were closed and they could not get a ballot in time. There was a gentleman in northern York County who his wife was on the ballot and he was never able to get a ballot to cast his vote for her, which I will tell you would probably really frost my preserves if my husband came home and said, sorry, honey, I couldn't vote for you on election day. So that, in fact, was not the case. And we had significant debate with regard to that provision as to estimating voter turnout. And it was just, in fact, that was considered to be a baseline because we wanted that decision to be made by the counties. Our local officials, we trusted to assure that they would know this is going to be a really hotly contested school board race. this mayor race is got the attention of a lot of people, so that we would empower them to make that decision. Better are county officials making those decisions than bureaucrats sitting in the Department of State in Harrisburg. So again, that's what's there. That is just a baseline. Is there something additional that we need to do to make sure that this doesn't happen? You know, do we need procedures or policies at the Department of State to give counties in the event that they have no ballots left or they have a limited number of ballots left? You know, we had polling places where people had to use the provisional, or not provisional, well, some people cast provisional ballots, some people were using the one machine that they had for disabled voters. So, you know, what do we need to do to make sure this doesn't happen? Because honestly, we talk about voter suppression. Getting to your polling place and finding out that there's no ballot for you and no way for you to cast your vote is voter suppression.
I think that's a discussion that's absolutely worth having as we go forward. Obviously, our election officials, you know, we do the best we can and even before those provisions were put in place, to make sure that there are enough ballots for every voter at these machines. And we certainly want to work with you and with our county officials on anything that we can do in that point. I will say, and I'll defer to our election officials, that, you know, we try to create contingency plans for any thing that might happen on election day, whether that be running out of ballots, whether it be the electricity going out, you know, things that might happen that might not lead to a smoother day as we want. And every experience leads us to revisit those policies and procedures and try to refine them to make sure that we are not running into these situations.
That would be very helpful. And just some things that I have thought about, you know, does a county or municipality have to report information to the Department of State when there are no more ballots left, to just monitor this and make sure that it doesn't continue to happen? And should the department maintain any data to alert a precinct or a county that a precinct may be facing a higher level of turnout? If there are key indicators to assist and guide the county to make sure that they have enough ballots at a polling place.
I'm going to put the spotlight on our election directors and have what they go through and what they monitor in terms of availability of ballots.
Well, the original ballot printing requirement before Act 77 was that every county needed to print enough ballots for 110% of their registered voters at every precinct. And I think what Act 77 was trying to address in amending that requirement is that not all elections are the same. You know, we have a 4-year election cycle. Everyone has sort of a different makeup to it. And then even there, you know, not all election cycles of the same type are the same. You can have busier years, not so busy years. And so Act 77 was, you know, trying to address that issue by encouraging or telling counties to look at the past as a guidepost, and that, you know, not to go with a one size fits all approach of the 110%. But, you know, maybe the part of that it doesn't take into account is that you're looking at the past, but you're also having to look at current circumstances. You know, what are the circumstances on the ground that you want to be aware of when you're trying to determine what turnout might be like? And in the primary, I think you had some additional turnout because of there were a lot of ballot questions on there that you don't normally see in a primary. So you get third-party people coming out and increased interest on the ballot. So, you know, where possibly Department of State could be helpful to counties would be to, you know, work together with the counties to come up with criteria for how do you look at what's going on your ballot in your community to try to ascertain where, you know, or if there are going to be areas where you have higher than usual turnout, and to be able to prepare for that.
Well,
And as far as as Sparse had mentioned, Senator, the balance between cost of printing 110% and the trying to guess what the turnout is a fine line that we had to weigh on expenses. There are tools that do real-time statistics and can give election directors the ability to see the turnout in real time if we were able to use them, like electronic poll books that can report back to the counties and tell them that, oh, I printed this many ballots, but I'm reaching that threshold of running out, and then action can be taken before there is an actual problem. We are currently not available. Those tools are not currently available to us to use within Pennsylvania.
Yes, and we are mindful. We have certainly heard about those. I think we also have to be mindful that it was the administration's unilateral moratorium on the old voting machines that, at least in my home county, you didn't have to worry about the number of ballots to be printed. It was not Act 77 that mandated those new voting machines. But certainly, we always do want to be mindful of costs, being prudent with taxpayer resources, regardless of whether they're taxes paid to the state, the county, or the municipality. So I thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and yield back my time.